But not revamp it in this way.
But this wasn't the 7-year. This was, we were following the policies and direction of City Council to open up the comprehensive plan, to do a significant community engagement, and to make changes on our comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. With that being said, I'm going to pass the gavel to Ms. Pontieri. I'd like to move that we table this comprehensive plan to a date uncertain, because I know the plan, and I don't think that our city is ready for what's coming with this comprehensive plan. And if I could get a second on that, I'd really appreciate it.
I will second for discussion.
Okay. All right. We got a second for discussion. Okay.
Actually, I can't
Yeah,
second.
sorry, that's good.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Pontier is acting as the
Yeah,
mayor, so she
sorry.
can't second.
Can anyone second this for discussion? No second? Okay, so it dies. I'll take the gavel back.
Mayor, may I just I have a suggestion that I think may help before we get into this next stage, because I do think that we need, it's my opinion, I was indifferent as to whether or not we addressed the comp plan or didn't. It didn't matter one way or the other to me. I would hate to see all of the hours and efforts and really some good things that I think have been accomplished by the good plan, or by the comp plan, go by the wayside. I will tell you, I think there's a lot of things that we've shored up in this comp plan that have been a lot stronger. One of them is conservation. Another is historical preservation. Those things were missing from the last comp plan that I think are vital to this city. We are not, I feel, fairly treating a lot of our historical sites the way we should, and this comp plan really, really helps in that regard. My objection to the current comp plan is the addition of the new land use designation and the abandonment of the current DRIs out west. I think that if we keep the DRIs that are in the westward expansion portion of the city, and not abandon them, keep the maps as is in the current comp plan, and eliminate the new land use designation, we could probably address a lot of your concerns, Mayor. I'm not trying to speak for you, but those are I think a lot of the concerns that have been voiced by the public, and that I have concerns for. So I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but I do have concerns about that new land use designation, because and you know, the comments back from the state were highly focused on the new land use designation with regards to the lack of certainty for land uses and zoning regulations and things like that that were associated with that new land use designation. So, you know, maybe a suggestion that we go in that direction rather than not moving forward with the comp plan as a whole.
I have several concerns too. I was hired in a large part because I'm opposed to urban sprawl, and really, that's all we have left. I had a meeting with all the major landowners as soon as I came into office, and all it's about is this comp plan and getting what they want. I was very taken aback by it, and I don't care for it too much, because if we know the strategic implications that are going to happen on the west side of the city. We know what's going to happen, the state's priorities, and I get that, and I understand that the staff has done a lot of work, and the award-winning comprehensive plan was for the presentation to the public, correct, City Manager?
Yes, sir.
So it's not about the comp plan itself, it's the way it was presented to the public and the input. And I'm hard pressed, and I think on our city website it says like 85,000 engagements with people in the public. Well, I know that's not true. It can't be true. Our population is around 107,000, so you're saying over 75% of the population were engaged during this comprehensive plan? No way that happened. So I'm very concerned about the urban sprawl, and I think we can do a lot in the DRIs. That meeting I had with the major property owners in the city and in the county, I was how do I say this? I was looking for people to offer up their lands for commercial development so we can bring industrial and commercial development in our city to offset our tax base because it is very lopsided. And you know, when you come into a position like this, when the first people that contact you, you need to be leery of it completely. Because I've never come into a job and had people pursue me for something that they didn't have an ask for. And I was really taken aback when I had that meeting with the landowners, and the manager of the airport is a person that's sitting in that meeting. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a county employee. Why is a county employee sitting here representing as a major landowner in our community? Because you're not. You're not an elected official. You don't own any land. You're a county employee. So with that being said, I couldn't get a second to table this. So Mr. Papa, you go ahead and continue on with your presentation.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to jump in here real quick. So my perspective on a comprehensive plan, okay? This is no different than when I used to help draft the National Security Council or the National Defense Strategy, or even the National Military Strategy for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is a living, breathing document that has to get updated, you know, along the way. You know, I think there's a lot of good work that's been done. I mean, the vice mayor she's the only person that's voted for this thing before it went to the state to get reviewed. You know, so she acknowledged that there was, even with, I think, some concerns that she had with it, there's a lot of good work that's been done. And so, and even the previous conversation that we had with Mr. Livingston, they've got to come back, and we still have to update the comprehensive plan and the use maps and things of that nature. So I think it's worth having a discussion. And at the end of the day, we're in the driver's seat here, right? So let's have a discussion and see what we can get done.
Well, the thing I'd like to bring forward is we have this situation with those other developers that are threatening to sue us, and the practice in the past is a plan. And you and I both know, Councilman, that your plan goes away as soon as the first shots are fired.
Right.
So you can plan all you want, but they treat our comprehensive plan like it's a legal document, and they're going to hold you to that. And I stood up before the last council, Councilwoman Pontieri, Vice Mayor knows for certain. I stood up and said they're going to amend the comprehensive plan so they can change the land designation codes to get what they want. Am I correct, Vice Mayor?
I recall you saying that, yes.
Okay, so it's not a legal binding document, and I guess it's kind of sort of legal. But they're going to use that the comprehensive plan, the land development code, to get what they want. And right now on the west side, those two DRIs that we have out there, their total entitlements, everything that we discuss in here about the comprehensive plan, land use, it's all about entitlements. Right now, currently, they are entitled to about 12,000 units out there, if I'm not mistaken. That's 12,000 units. Right now, going from DRI to MPD, it moves from 12 houses per acre to 15 houses per acre. So we're increasing density with the MPD, and we're gonna be taken advantage of. This city has been, and I mentioned this the other day, we have been taken advantage of since the beginning. When they sold that water utility, when they sold wastewater and wastewater treatment plant 1, they sold it for $25 million in 1999. Turn around 3 years later, we bought it for $83 million. So all of our complaints about water rates and stuff is because of stuff like this here, the city being taken advantage of. Those landowners didn't pony up any property, saying, "Hey, Mike, I'll gladly rezone that land to commercial and industrial to support our city's growth." Not one of them offered 1 square acre to upzone to industrial or commercial. A large portion of our available lands on the northwest side of the city are owned by outside entities. They're not even in the United States. The agent is out of Panama on most of it, and that concerns the same developer as taking us to court. So with that being said, does anyone else have any comments from the dais?
Yeah, just really quickly, Mayor. I share a lot of your concerns. I voiced actually when we transmitted to the state my concerns that the land out west should maintain the current DRIs. I was very, very clear about that, and I still hold to that sentiment. I feel like we've been crop dusted, and I've said that before as well. I feel like crop dusters have come through here, put up their houses, taken their money, and left us holding the bag of infrastructure. And that's what they've left behind. And it falls on the backs of our residents, and it bothers me to my core. So I definitely hear you. I think that the best way forward, and obviously I want to hear Mr. Papa's presentation because we still have to address the housing element and how certain things are stated, but I still believe that the best way forward is to move forward with the comp plan, make sure that land out west keeps the DRI status, and abandon this MPMU, because to be quite candid, the only reason this MPMU was added into the comp plan was for that westward land. So if we're keeping them to the DRI, there's no need for the MPMU. I don't like it. I think it's too uncertain in its terms. It doesn't give us it doesn't put us in the driver's seat to, I think Councilman Gumbaro, your point, we should remain in the driver's seat. And that MPMU is so malleable to the benefit of the developers that it takes us out of the driver's seat. It really does. So that's where I stand. But I think that there's been a lot of good things that have been done in this comp plan, and so I would like to see it as a whole move forward.
And as far as that one land designation code, and I personally feel it'll just add to the problem with the short-term rentals that we're already dealing with as far as writing that ordinance. Like I said during that presentation back then, you couldn't find me a handful of people that came to those meetings for that constituent outreach as far as the comp 2050 plan that said, I want single-family houses with additional dwelling units for mom and them. No, it didn't happen. That was all developer-driven, plain and simple. So that's one of my main concerns. I'd gladly have those people that own that property out on the west side say, here, Palm Coast, this portion along the railroad, you can develop it. We want to convert it to industrial so we can grow your tax base in your city. So I'm doing what the voters voted me in to do, and I'm here for 4 years. You got me for 4 years, unless you have me indicted or killed. So I'm going to do what's best for this city, and you can bet your bottom dollar on that I'm going to do the right thing. You don't have to worry about my integrity. I'm going to do the right thing for this city. Anything else from the dais?
I just have a little bit. I guess my question is in regards to this new land use category, and there's been discussion about intent and all these things, but we still have the ability to negotiate those MPDs, correct? So we can define how those land use codes are actually implemented.
Yes, but if we have a comp plan that adds a land use designation and there are applications that come before us and they say, well, we want to change over to this land use, and there's certain things in the ordinances that we have to go by. So there are certain criteria that we have to go by when we consider an application. It's not an arbitrary decision that we come up with for good reason. So yes, but we're still handcuffed. This is the first step to kind of opening that door that I'm fearful we could go down, number one. Number two, it's not always going to be us in these seats. So,
exactly.
You know,
You go to the slide that has the map on there, because it's.
My pushback on not going to be us in the seats is that it will be somebody elected by the people in these seats. So our thoughts about how this is are our thoughts because we were elected.
Mm-hmm.
Back up.
Maybe that changes because it's a different council, but that's because they were elected.
Well, from my perspective, Councilman Miller, they were pushing through this comp plan amendment, and that's what it is. It's an amendment. They were pushing it through to get what they want, and I'm sure the majority of the previous council were all for it. You know, we even put a ballot referendum up so we could borrow money to do public-private partnerships to let the developers out of commitments they had already made in the DRIs. Am I correct, Vice Mayor?
That's what I pointed out, yeah.
Plus the road. We have secured $105 million for that road out west, which is not fully funded, but that was part of the DRI, for them to do it or make it so, make it happen. So I am not Rainier, Radiant, whatever they're called now. That is ITT. So we are going to mess around with this comp plan, and we're going to allow the same people that have been taking advantage of the city since its inception, before its inception, to continue the same process. It's just another way to get to their ends, and I'm not going to stand for it. So we can go through this, but as I see it right now, I'm going to be hard pressed to vote for this unless we have some assurance, and we still don't have any assurance, because I can guarantee you that in 2 years, well, less than 2 years for you, Ms. Pontieri, and you, Councilman Gambaro, if you decide to run for that seat, and they're going to try to flip the council to get what they want even further. And then in 4 years, they're going to be looking back, okay, you can bet your bottom dollar that they didn't expect me to win this seat to begin with. That was a shocker to all of them. So I'm going to do the right thing by the city, but we can go through this whole process, Mr. Pop, if you're ready to continue, unless there's anything else from the dais.
Not right now.
Okay.
Yeah, City Manager?
Mayor, if I can, I know that many of you are, Councilmember Gambaro, you're a requirements guy, so I kind of want to work backwards before we get into the nitty-gritty of the presentation. So staff presented with a couple of different options. And I'm going to go to that last slide, which is, do you want to make changes to the comprehensive plan policies? Do you want to make substantive changes to the policies? Do you want to revisit the housing element? Do you want to revisit the future land use map? We're trying to, kind of seek for some clarity, because if that is the course that you want to take, then it's going to change our timeline a little bit, and I'm going to tell you why. So if we make any major changes, then we need to go back in front of the planning board and review those changes with them, and then it comes back to city council. And then also, we do have a timeline from the state that we need by April 4th. So if we're going to make substantive changes and need to go back to planning board, then we need to request the state for an extension, because we're not going to make that timeline. So I'm just trying to work backwards and find out what you want us to change, if you want us to change, so then that's going to affect our outcome.
I would like to make changes to the housing element and the future land use element, and I think that they are going to be substantive changes.
Okay.
I don't want to do any changes to the current comp plan, because everything we do, just about everything we do here in these meetings is amending the comprehensive plan. How many, since this is really the starting point. Those DRIs do not expire until 2034. Our current comp plan does not expire until 2035. So we have, 9 years, 10 years? And how many times since, Mr. Papa, you've been here since Christ was a corporal, how many times has our comprehensive plan been amended since the inception of the city? Or, I'm sorry, the inception of the comp plan, which was 2009, 2010. How many times has it been amended?
I can't give you an exact number, Mayor, but I can probably tell you it's probably over 25 times.
25 times. So, and I'm almost certain that most of those amendments were to facilitate what we've gone from 100-foot lot lines, right? We've gone from 100-foot lot lines down to 50, down to 40. So we're packing them in like sardines in our city. And now we're wanting to pack them in. They're going to want to pack them in like sardines on the west side. Because I went up and I visited one of those sites that site up in Yulee. I went in there, everything. I go around the corner from the corporate building and pull into a neighborhood, and there's 0 lot lines, 2-story houses, 2,400 square feet, and the houses are going for $450,000. That's in the middle of nowhere on the back 40 up in Nassau County. That's unincorporated unincorporated Nassau County. Not only are they unincorporated, they're under some type of stewardship program through the state. So this is what we're dealing with here. I got an email this morning about, from someone, I got to run it to ground when this meeting is over, was talking about this is it, paying attention to HR Bill H2447 SB 184, affordable housing, which requires rather than authorize local governments to adopt ordinance which allow accessory dwellings. So the state, we're supposed to have home rule, and the state's going to take away our right to regulate the type of housing we have in our area. And you can almost bet it that developers are lobbying for that. So these are the real life consequences we deal with as a community and a city. And I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same sheet of music. Pull up that map to show the loop road, will you, Mr. Papa? You just had it. Okay, if everybody looks at this map, and a lot of people don't understand, that loop road, we're facilitating that because we garnered the funds from the state, well, not fully funded, but $105 million. The state's intent is to run a road from north to south, from Orlando to Jacksonville on that west side. And during that, we have to worry about Old Brick Road out there, a historic site, to the Vice Mayor's point. We have to worry about that and preservation of that site, not to mention all the development up on the north end of the city, Sawmill. That was a slap in the face to the history of this county when they named that development out there Sawmill, because they didn't take any consideration to that historic site. Matter of fact, well, I won't get into that because there's probably some legal ramifications to that, some of the things that they did up there, but I can tell you that this is very consequential to what's going on in our city. And I understand the strategic priorities of the state on that road from the north-south connector. But we have to take advantage of this and bring in industrial growth to our city, because we are not a retirement community. If we don't diversify our tax base, we're always going to be digging out of the hole. And that is my intent. That's what I was hired to do, is to shore up our infrastructure and to bring jobs and employment opportunities and industrial growth into this community. So if everybody's looking at that map, even at home, you can look at it and you can get these slides and you'll see what the intent of the state is and why they are so pushing forward with this comprehensive plan amendment. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I agree in terms of the, what I ran on, same things, infrastructure, jobs, commercial, diversify the tax base, support our first responders and public safety. Devil's advocate here. Some of this land is annexed into the city. There's potential for future lands to be annexed based on the comp plan. What's to prevent, kind of the same points that I put forward with the parcel on 100, that they work with another authority that they're currently under, the county.
Pull up the current city map, Mr. Papa.
That one right there.
Right.
The one that shows the DRIs. Do you have it in that slide deck?
It's the one on the left, Mayor, where.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Right.
So all that land out there on the west side, that's already zoned into the city.
Right.
They got that big donut hole, and they're going to be looking to annex that in.
Correct.
Not to mention that the majority of that land out there is wet.
Mm-hmm.
We have a creek that runs right down through the middle of that one property. So we have to deal with those water issues. We're going to have to deal with them in the future once that annexation comes in.
So what's to prevent, to my point, that
Well, they would have to go through, and they're going to have to lobby each of us to change the zoning out there to the way it's currently, because they're only entitled to 12,000 units out there. That's what's currently annexed in, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm talking about the unannexed property. So what I'm saying is, what's to prevent them from going through another authority, i.e. county?
They don't have a choice. We're the only ones that can provide services that.
I understand that, so if I can complete my sentence.
I'm sorry.
What's to prevent them from going through another authority, seeking the land use categories that they want, an amendment to their comp plan, getting what they want and then being compulsory annexed within the city, and then we're still dealing with it, except for, in many of the cases, we may not have collected the impact fees and some of the things that we need to help provide some of these, infrastructure services, whereas with us being involved, we at least have a say in how this works.
Well, we already have a say.
Well, I understand that,
The
but we're
majority
trying
of
to
that
throw it
property
out and say no.
The majority of that property is already part of our city, and they're currently under DRIs that they're committed to.
Understood.
They could, I guess they could go through county, but that's,
I think Councilmember Miller's talking about the 7,500 acres, the donut hole.
the donut hole.
In particular,
Correct, yeah.
not the 12.5 that's already been, adjudicated as a DRI mixed use. I think it has a commercial section down in the bottom right of it on the 12,000.
I'm just saying, obviously, we know how this works, right? And the things that you're talking about in terms of people working for their best interests, right? And sometimes that does not align with other best interests. So
Well,
if I were them, that'd be the route that I would take, right? And then we lose some say in how this works. And then we're stuck with the infrastructure maintenance of it.
It's like we're going to continue to fight this battle. And if our county is not willing to help us out and not allow stuff like this, we're always going to be fighting the battle.
I agree.
I think that the current county electeds were elected for the same reason you were mayor. I feel very strongly that they are kind of gatekeepers and putting the residents first, gatekeepers to overdevelopment. I feel very strongly about that. So I think now is the time, to both of your points, to really have control over this process when we have a good county board, a good city board, with diversity of opinion, but still very strong mandate, I think, to be very careful about how we develop the future of this city and county. So my stance is, again, that we keep the DRIs in place, do not adopt the new proposed maps, keep the maps as they are. If they do annex in, then we have the ability to, have some control over what's done with that property. Have you looked at the DRIs? Because the current DRIs, which I think they're good, the current DRIs are good DRIs. They actually delineate what portions of the property need to be industrial, what portions of the property would be residential, what portions of the property are conservation. My biggest issue that I've said since the very beginning of the proposal of the MPMU, this new land use designation, there's two. One, it's all multi-use, so it's all willy-nilly in my opinion. We can put whatever we want, wherever we want, and we only have to have a certain percentage here or a certain percentage there, but the multi-use issue lends itself to being manipulated by Live Local, which I have a concern for. That's number one. Number two, there is no requirement overall for certain conservation. So right now in the DRIs, there are certain areas that have to be this, certain areas that have to be that. That goes away if we don't keep those DRIs. So I think that that's the concern here. And so if we can keep those in place, and that's what I said before we transmitted this plan to the state, if we can keep that in place, I think that that's the best way forward. But as we're looking at these housing elements, to your point about the laws that might be coming down from the state that are going to force upon us extra density, we do not need to do anything voluntarily to allow extra density right now, because it could get forced upon us. And that's number one. Number two, our unemployment rate went down for the first time this month in, I think, maybe a year. For several months in a row over the last, I think, year, our unemployment rate has continued to rise. We've been one of the highest in the state, as a matter of fact. We just now dropped. So we need work. We need jobs. We don't need more housing. And the whole premise of, well, we can't bring in commercial until we have more rooftops, that is a false premise when you have a rising unemployment rate. We don't have jobs for the people that are here now. So I think we keep the current DRIs, let the current designations in those DRIs stand, and let's work on bringing in business that is that will complete those DRIs as they are. And then, look at these other housing elements and these other land use elements to make sure that we are protecting the city and doing what the residents did vote you in to do.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question for Mr. Tyner. Since it's free-for-all Tuesday mornings. Ray, the donut hole, the 7,500 acre area, okay? If this council decides to vote with the 2035 map, what does that have as far as impact on Project Magellan and other things that there's interest in having discussions about? What's the impact of not designating that some sort of, what's the impact of going with the 2035 map versus the 2050 map?
Okay, well, first, let me back up, because when you had the recommendation on board, the donut hole gap,
Yeah.
this is, we can't put the mixed-use master plan designation on that gap because we don't have an annexation. So one of our recommendations, as you saw, was to, because of that, to continue with the 2035 plan was one of our recommendations for our
Courses
future
of
land
action,
use
yeah.
map. Now, moving forward, if that's the case, we're always open to working with the property owners and moving forward with plans to do a future annexation, which would necessitate a future land use map amendment, whatever that form may be, and then the zoning. So
Okay.
hopefully that answers your question. But the gap, we can't, they're not annexed, so we can't send that up to Tallahassee to adopt that map on here.
Okay, so I guess you didn't answer my question. I think all of us here are focused on commercial development. I think that's fair to say, and to include Mr. Stevens. So Project Magellan and others like it, it's a commercial-driven impact, or an opportunity for this city. What is the impact if this 7,500 acre lot what is the impact if we go with the 2530 or 2035 map on future commercial development in that sector if we go with that map? So I guess what I'm saying is, will the 2035 map preclude commercial development in that area?
It would be,
Or will it slow it down?
So maybe, Councilmember Gambaro, I can help a little bit here, right? So what Ray just said is that we cannot do anything with that land because it's not annexed. So once they petition for annex, then
Then they come back?
then they would need to, just like you saw here before earlier this morning, where it would require a comprehensive plan amendment and as well as a rezoning, because it's currently zoned Flagler County Agricultural, correct?
that's right.
Right.
That's right.
So it would need to go through that process.
So to my point that this is a living, breathing document, they can come back and update it at a later point. Can we move forward with approving the comp plan with the 2035 map? I mean, is there consensus here? I know the mayor's, I know where he stands, but for the other two council members, I mean,
Well, really-
it's important to have a vision for this city that goes out to
I think
2050.
also I'd like to add, we talk about, we don't need more rooftops and we're going to add commercial. Where are we going to add it? I know talking to our economic development people, we have people coming to us that say, we want to put, manufacturing and we want to do this and we want to do that. And we say, we don't have any land for you that you can do that on. So
That's all being driven by the same owners of the land that's been holding on to the land and controlling it for the last 30 years. And that one project that the councilman mentioned, that property has no relevance on that project being out on the west side. It's not even in that donut hole as far as the maps that I've seen.
Okay, well, that's the
Again,
question I was
I
asking.
feel like there is some limitation here. We have a little bit of land in certain places that we can use, but It's not a lot. So at some point, we're going to have to find a way to work with, like you said, the owners that control some of this land to then be able to use it for commercial development and industrial development.
Yeah, well, they can do that now. They can do that on their DRIs now. They're choosing not to because, look, the original plan, okay, and I know because I was part of these meetings, was to have this comp plan go along the same timeline as the proposed MPD for this land out west. The landowner did not do that. So that's when I took a stand and said, I will not approve this new land use designation until I see what your intentions are via that MPD. They failed to bring that forward. So I could no longer support that. The same way I cannot support an annexation that's multifamily when they're just telling me, well, we intend to do a rezoning to commercial. Great, I hope you do, but that's hope and a prayer, and I'm an attorney. I go based on what the documents say. The documents say right now that in the DRI, you have to have industrial here. Awesome, put industrial there. Don't bring forward to me a new comp plan amendment that says that we can change what can go on out there without showing me what you actually intend to do via an MPD application. So I have been very vocal about my support of the westward expansion for the availability of commercial. It has gotten a very bad name because certain council people that were in these seats before were hyper-focused on bonds and hyper-focused on residential. I don't think that's fair. There is an opportunity out west to bring in a lot of commercial and a lot of industrial. It is up to this council, it's up to the planning board, and it's up to staff to be the gatekeepers and make sure that we use that land the right way to diversify our tax base and bring in good paying jobs in industry. Industry, not chain restaurants, but industry. So we can do that with the current DRIs. We can do that with the comp plan. This does not have to be one or the other. We can move forward with the comp plan, we can keep the DRIs, we can get rid of the pork in this comp plan that will allow more crop dusting of our city. But we need to make a decision. Who are we going to be as council? Are we going to be the council that says we see the potential progress, but we also need to be gatekeepers? That's what I think we need to do.
Well, in that case, Vice Mayor, I move that we approve this comp plan with the current FLUM, which is the 2035 map, and all the responses and comments from the state of Florida so we can meet our deadline.
So just I'll chime in here, Mr. Mayor, if I can. So right now, this is a presentation.
This is a presentation.
Yeah, we're not moving to pass anything tonight. What the city manager and staff need direction for the next meeting when we would have a second read passing if the council directs that.
This is a first read?
No, this is not a first read. This is just a
We're
presentation.
just finishing the presentation?
Yeah, we're just finishing the presentation.
Well, we can make a motion whenever we want, can't we?
Technically, yeah, but you would need to come back for a second read because you need to give a notice. So I think what you're trying to do is give a direction, right?
Yeah, let's go. So I made a motion. Sorry for interrupting your brief, but we've been doing that since we started this topic.
So is your motion to
Approve the comp plan with the 2035 map that the vice mayor feels very strongly about. I think that's what she wants, is to keep that map. And in recognition also of all the hard work that's been put into this comp plan, not just by the city staff, but our entire community with the feedback on what the vision should be for our city going forward. And if I think that's a compromise.
and keeping the current DRIs?
And keeping the current DRIs, that's the 2035 map, right?
Or can we do that, city manager?
Yes, Mayor, that's one of the options that we laid out in front of you, is adopting the 2035 map that keeps the DRIs currently there. The donut is not annexed into the city. It would stay its land use designation as part of the county. And then whenever, or if that were to ever be brought in front of this council, we would address it at that time.
And I get a second for that? Are you good, Vice Mayor?
I'll keep my comments until after there's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so for discussion, I thank you for the motion. I just want to make a few changes as we're going through the presentation to some of the housing elements. So that's why I didn't second the motion, not because I don't agree in general with what you've put forward, but just because I think that there are some more details that need to be looked at prior to us adopting the entire comp plan without some of those minor changes.
Sorry, Ms. Gambo, if I may just add, it might be better for this council to let them finish their presentation. I only say that because if, say, you're going through, you do want to make changes, I wouldn't want you guys to keep changing this motion as we go through. Just a suggestion from legal counsel. As I always say, you guys make the decision. I just
Okay.
advise you.
Let's finish the presentation.
Can you withdraw the previous motion
Well,
until we finish with the presentation?
So, Blake, can we just continue with the presentation?
Yes, sir.
As part of the discussion. As
part of the discussion, yeah.
There we go.
Great.
We're getting there. All right, Mr. Papa. Ray?
All right. Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Jose Papa for the Community Development Department. We'll pick up from the housing element, which is where we left off, I believe, last time. And staff's objective in providing this presentation is just to give you a background on the policies that are in the currently transmitted comprehensive plan. Just to know that staff will be happy to meet with each of you individually if there are specific, so we can get to the changes that you really want. But from this, we understand what the main crux of where we're going towards the adoption of this comprehensive plan. So with the housing element, as part of that housing update of the housing element, we developed a concept known as life stage housing. And life stage housing, without going through all the bullet points, is basically a recognition that we have different types of families and households in the city. And the objective should be within the housing element that we should be able to provide housing for the different circumstances and different situations that households and families are in. We should be able to provide, there should be housing available for those, for that married couple who are now expanding into 2 or 3 additional children. So again, and part of this, another example would be a new graduate who probably comes to the city as a nurse or as a sheriff's deputy, having housing available that they can afford to live in as they start their career. And so there are policies in there, and I know that there are policies that are specific regarding certain strategies that that may be undertaken or looked at in order to address that issue of life stage housing. But I think through all this, the real intent of the updates to the policy is that we will look at different housing strategies and opportunities in order to diversify our housing supply so that we are able to provide for a wider housing variety that might make the housing supply more accessible, depending on what housing or what life stage you're in. And again, just to summarize, again, recognizing that diverse housing for all life stages is what the basic crux of the update is. There's funding and support programs continuing to implement those and make those available to our residents, whether it's SHIP or CDBG. Neighborhood compatibility and protection, again, being cognizant and recognizing our existing residential neighborhoods and protecting them from inappropriate adjacent uses. Involving the public and encouraging their participation as we continue to develop. And innovative and sustainable housing development. I think looking at the long-term strategy of what makes our neighborhoods great and keeping those elements to make sure that we protect our existing neighborhoods and not allow changes to diminish the quality of life in our neighborhoods. So future land use is, I think, the final element that we'll have to go through. I think we just beefed up some of the policies we have regarding balanced and sustainable development. Again, continue to maintain a residential character, preventing sprawl, protecting open spaces, providing those mixed-use opportunities, and providing compact, contiguous development patterns to efficiently utilize our infrastructure, conserve energy, and discourage urban sprawl. Beefing up our environmental protection and resource management areas, being sensitive to those areas that are greenbelt and conservation areas and protecting them and maintaining them. And of course, strategic and adaptive planning. This is found in various policies through the future land use element. Again, looking at more of a midterm look, that's the 10-year, but also a long-term look at the 20-year planning period and how that we can prepare the city to, as we continue to move down the road and making, as the conversation here has been, making sure that we have land available for the city's objectives of diversifying our tax base and having adequate industrial and commercial lands. Continuing with the future land use element, growth management and infrastructure coordination. That's a continuing practice that I think takes a special position in the spotlight these days with our need to expand our infrastructure. Public safety and community engagement. This was a new set of policies that were developed in conjunction with the fire department to help us with maintaining our ISO ratings and having the safest community available for our residents. And the last thing that we have is the mixed use and balanced land use. Again, there is the master plan mixed use, new land use designation that is intended to mainly be applied to the areas west of the railroad. Within these MPMU, you have policies that talk about recreation, open space, residential uses, sports and ecotourism, and being able to provide supporting retail and services for the expansion of the community out west or west of the tracks. Some details in the last part of our presentation is really just, again, some details about what's within the master plan mixed use, that new land use category. The MPMU is the designation that's been developed to assist in the development of a mixed-use community in the annexed areas west of US 1, or west of the railroad tracks in this case. The MPD development agreement, that's to be approved by the City Council, is the implementing tool for MPMU. Within the MPD master plan map, that's as specified within the policies of the MPMU, you'll have a couple of things. One's the greenway overlay, which is to identify really those interconnected greenways that permits passive recreation, such as trails, campgrounds, could include roadways and utility crossings, utilities and sports facilities, ecotourism, agritourism, public facilities, stormwater harvesting, water supply uses, and other uses that will be, again, further defined within an MPD zoning. The villages were intended to be the basic building block of the community. These are essentially your residential areas. Within the village, or adjacent to villages, you will have the village centers, which are intended to be your mixed-use districts that are intended to provide for service to the villages or to your residential areas. As called for within the policy for the MPMU, village centers will not exceed 200 acres in size, and of course allows a wide variety of land uses, again intended to serve the residential or the village areas within the MPMU. And finally, you have the Regional Activity Center, which is to serve as a regional destination for employment, shopping, recreation. These will be, I guess, a larger village center is one way to look at it. There are to be a minimum of 200 acres in size. And within the Regional Activity Center, you will still have some residential uses and recreational amenities, but I think it's intended to, again, serve at a more regional level. And finally, from that, probably the centerpiece, one of the other land uses within the MPMU is the employment center. These will to be located adjacent to the transportation network, the regionally significant transportation network. And it's here that we are to encourage economic development and opportunities for jobs within this MPMU area. The employment centers shall include a mixture of office, civic, institutional, industrial, warehouse, supporting retail, supporting residential, or other similar uses. And I believe that's just a leftover bullet point. I'll get into more of that later.
Can you go back one slide, Mr. Pop?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they require an MPD development agreement approved by City Council is required to implement the MPMU.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is just a way of packaging all that to get what they want.
You're looking at me for comment. Okay, so my feeling on the MPMU is I don't feel it is specific enough with regards to how much conservation there needs to be. Now, I do recognize that when you drill down on what's required in the villages, what's required in the village centers, what's required in the activity centers, there are specificities with regards to ratios of square feet from residential to commercial. However, I don't see a specific delineation required for what portion has to be villages versus regional activity center. What portion can be a greenway overlay versus village centers. That's what I don't see. Additionally, it's very important that this council realize open space, quote, can be a retention pond. That is not open space. So I just think that this master plan mixed use, in my opinion, is smoke and mirrors. I haven't liked it from the beginning. I don't think we need it. I think that the comp plan needs to be approved without the master plan mixed use additional land use category. To me, you got to ask yourselves, why would you make such a big change to your current comp plan by adding this mix? What does this do for us that we need? The answer could be, well, it does create these awesome sounding regional activity centers. We have that now. It's called mixed use. We don't need this. So I have hesitancy in approving this master plan mixed use because I think it's so vague and ambiguous that it can be malleable. And even though, by a landowner, even though it does require an MPD development agreement to be approved by City Council in order to get there, they can do what they do now, which is say, well, your comp plan provides for this. And so because of what the Florida statutes say and our ordinances say about our required elements and considerations when an application comes before us, if we are not very specific as to why we would approve or deny an application, it can then be challenged. So right now, while we have unfettered discretion to raise the red flag and say no to this without having to give any justification whatsoever, we can just say no. I think we need to do it and stick with what we already have in place and develop that, knowing what we can do with that right now.
So, just your main issue is that it creates risk, right? Similar to, some of the other situations we've had where someone says they have an entitlement based on our land use code, but, we might not think that because we haven't approved an MPD, and then they may try to push it through anyways because the vague nature of the comp plan.
It's a lack of certainty, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand that. I mean, obviously, my perspective is that we can get that level of detail with the MPD, but I understand where you're coming from. Certainly, my main concern is commercial and industrial, and trying to get that in here. I know, or I think that seems to be the case for everybody. So just wanted to clarify that, sorry.
Okay, can we go to the next slide real quick, please? All right, so Vice Mayor, here on this slide here, it says overall mix of uses 50% towards total land. It gets into some definition there on wetlands. Also, so it lays out on overall residential density, not to exceed 1.2 dwelling units. Okay, so there is some further specificity laid out here. Can you go through that piece there on this slide?
Yes, sir, if you want to go through the bullet points, sure.
Right.
So, yes, these are expressed as policies under the MPMU regarding density, and I've, of course, summarized them into these bullet points. Density intensity, the overall residential density shall not exceed 1.2 dwelling units per gross acre with a non-residential intensity within any single parcel of the MPMU shall be at a floor area ratio of 1.0. So the overall mix of uses, the statement here is that the 50% of the total lands within an MPMU designation shall be planned for recreation open space, and such uses within the greenway overlay will count toward this percentage. Under the definition of the open space, that's within the MPMU category. Open space is defined as land that is not intensely developed for residential, commercial, industrial, or institutional uses, and may include, but is not limited to, wetlands, natural water bodies, resource-based ecotourism, agritourism, active and passive resource-based recreation and parks, community gardens, stormwater management facilities, well fields, agriculture and forest lands, pasture land, plazas, and similar green spaces. Such uses may be commercial in nature. The third bullet point, any open space and recreation lands within each village, which is located outside of a greenway overlay, that satisfy the 10% condition in policy 1711B, will also satisfy this 50% minimum condition. And policy 1711B requires that 10% of area in each village shall be retained in open space or recreation. And finally, the MPDs will include a development program to demonstrate compliance with the following non-residential space standards. So within your agreement, you will have to show that, developer will have to show that the retail and service at a minimum shall provide 50 square feet of retail and service space per dwelling units, and shall be planned for in a regional activity center, village center, or neighborhood centers with standards measured in the aggregate across the areas. In the workplace employment center, I believe I left some things out here, but it's a minimum requirement of 60 square feet of non-residential use within the workplace and employment center per dwelling unit. So the language mirrors what you have for retail service under the retail service bullet point, except that instead of 50 square feet, it's 60 square feet. And I believe it does get into what's within the workplace employment center. And if I remember correctly, it includes office, healthcare, and industrial uses.
That the greenway overlay counts towards this percentage. That's land they can't use anyway because it's already wet. So they're using that to count towards a percentage. You understand what I'm saying?
What does intensely developed mean?
That's a good question.
Those are the things that I don't
Yes,
like about
absolutely.
this. Those are the terms that I think are very subjective and don't give us any certainty. And I remember when I was reading the very specific policies that are not listed, because you can't put them all in these slides, understandably, there's so many of them. But when I was reading the policies specifically for this, those were the types of things that were concerning to me. So, you know, the other kind of concerning thing to me is when we look at where it says some of the things that are required in the regional activity center, it says it shall provide a range of housing types, recreational amenities, diverse retail and services, entertainment, and/or employment opportunities. Why aren't we, again, requiring certain things rather than these being this very, well, it says or, it says intensely developed, but we don't have any meaning for that. So, those are just the types of things that I think when we look at stuff like this, particularly when I'm looking at it from a future possible dispute, legal eye, those are the things that concern me.
Any answers? That's one of the reasons I wanted to table the whole thing, because some of the issues I have as far as, density and intensity is like height requirements, or height restrictions within the city. And I said this, over the past several months or even a year or so ago. Palm Coast is going to have a skyline. It's eventually going to happen, whether you want it or not, it's going to happen. So as far as like height restrictions here in the core of the city, I have no problem with, higher built buildings, because we're eventually going to have higher built buildings. But that was just one of my observations that would be a major change from this, was about height restrictions.
Yeah.
Like our height restrictions right now, like Texas Roadhouse. Every Texas Roadhouse in the country has a Texas flag and an American flag flying above it. But because of our height restrictions here in Palm Coast, they can't fly something that's iconic to their industry or their business. That's just my perspective. Okay, continue.
Sorry, Mr. Papa, can you go, I think, did we skip a slide? There was another one that talked about specifically the Greenway overlay. Yes, this one. So if you go down to the third bullet point, conservation, no conservation, future land use designation, nor conservation easements other than in accordance with the federal and state permit. This was something that I talked about with the landowner ad nauseum. I said, what's the holdup? Why don't we want to have conservation designations in this new land use category? And the response was, don't worry about it. We're going to have plenty of conservation and green space. Now, I want to believe them. I do. But I don't care who it is that's telling me that. It is not my job to trust what you're telling me. It's my job to make sure we mandate it, because that's what our residents want. That's why people move to Palm Coast, is because of our open space and our trails and the natural beauty that we have mandated be in our, in our developments and throughout the city. So this is another thing that really concerned me about this master plan mixed use land use category. Just something to kind of point out. And even if we don't nix the entire land use category, this is something that I would want to see changed before we adopt it.
Continue on, Mr. Pop.
Yes, sir. So let me see where I am. Am I here? Yeah. Oh, let me just go back one slide and talk about the contents of a Greenway overlay. So as part of the MPD review that would come forward, should we have a area of the city that's designated as MPMU, within, and if we have a Greenway overlay, the following shall be addressed within that MPD. Compatibility to minimize the effects, the edge effects and conflicts between the Greenway overlay and the more intensely developed areas is probably what's left there, not mentioned. Guidelines for design elements within and adjacent to the Greenway overlay. Conservation, as Mrs. Pontieri pointed out. There's no conservation flume designation or conservation easements other than what would be required by a federal or state permit. The development of a habitat conservation managed plan. It's to be implemented as part of that federal and state environmental permitting process. And this document is then to be a living document and will be modified as the final boundaries of the Greenway overlay are established, as set forth in the applicable MPD. We're to have something for monitoring and enforcement. to ensure that there is consistency within the elements and to monitor and enforce any applicable federal and state environmental or regulatory permit issued for lands within the Greenway overlay. And finally, public access provisions. Provisions within the MPD for the Greenway overlay to allow public access to the Greenway overlay, balancing, again, the recreational use with the purpose and intent of the Greenway overlay, which does allow some development. And I believe we've gone over the slides, so I will just jump on to the comments we've received. Yes,
Sorry,
ma'am?
there's just one more thing I want to point out on the last slide too, because I think this is important, because it does say overall mix of uses, 50% of the total lands within the master plan mixed use designation shall be planned for recreational and open space. But if you go down, it says such uses may be commercial in nature. What does that mean? So, can we have a park that's been commercialized, that we're then considering to be part of this 50% greenway conservation? That is not conservation. So, again, it's little things like this that allow this land use category to be taken advantage of, and it could very well be a good intention that is taken advantage of. But it's statements like this that, again, if we're going to adopt this, we need to get rid of statements like that. If there is a true conservation or open space, or it should not be something that can then be commercialized. So just wanted to point that out for council as well.
We've already been through that in the past here, where residents say they were sold this house across the street. It's green space. But someone owns that green space. And what came to be was, well, we're going to now develop it. Ryan's Landing, for example. I'm sure those people were told that property in front of their house, or, in that block, oh, that's green space. It's never going to be developed. But we're running out of land, and they're shoving them in like sardines as much as they can. And now we have an issue with that development. But continue on, please.
Right, so we'll move on to the comments we received from the Department of Commerce and other state agencies also, and our response. As we know, the comp plan was transmitted to the state and the various reviewing agencies on September 5th of last year. We did receive a comment letter from the state and the other reviewing agencies, October 7th. As stated in the state's letter to the city may either adopt with changes, or not adopt the proposed comprehensive plan amendment. As required by Florida statutes, or as stated in Florida statutes, a second public hearing on the adoption of the comprehensive plan must be within 180 days of the receipt of comments, which would be April 5th, 2025, and that's a Sunday. So, of course, it will have to be sometime before then. And as mentioned earlier during this meeting, if there are substantial changes, we will have to go to the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board before coming back to City Council with any change to the amendments that were transmitted to the state and the review agencies. We are allowed to request an extension, as City Manager has already mentioned. So the first comment that we received, and it had to do with an existing land use category, and that's mixed use. And the comment was that it does not specify the land use categories, densities, and intensities, the percentage distribution among the mix of uses, or any other standard to guide their distribution as required by Section 163. I think what staff's intent is just to point out to the review agency that within the comprehensive plan itself, under the mixed-use category, we identify what zoning categories are permitted. And within those zoning categories, it does call out what the maximum densities and intensities are. So I don't know if they missed the table or not, but this is our response to them in terms of identifying what the maximum densities and intensities are. And also another policy that covers that is that within the mixed-use land use category, a maximum of 20% of the total land area within this flume designation citywide may be zoned or developed for residential use, with a maximum 33% of the residential units accounting at a density equal to or greater than 15 units per acre. And a maximum 25% of the total land area within this flume designation may be zoned or developed at an intensity equal to or greater than 0.55 floor area ratio. So within the existing comprehensive plan, without having to amend it, we do have these existing policies that are within the comp plan itself that calls for what the maximum FAR and densities are. And also, you know, the story behind this mixed use policy 1113, is that mixed use is our commercial designation. We don't have a commercial high intensity or commercial low intensity. That is, if you have a commercial 1, commercial 2, commercial 3 zoning district, it would have a land use designation of mixed use because we don't have a commercial. So that policy exists, and the limit on the residential exists so that someone just doesn't take advantage of that and convert all of our mixed-use areas into residential uses. That policy exists to put that limit or cap in how much of your mixed-use land use area can actually be used for straight residential development. Now, the second comment has to do with the new land use category of master plan mixed use. And basically the same comment was provided that there's not enough, it does not clearly define the types of allowed uses. The MPMU lacks specification on the land use categories, densities and intensities, the percentage distribution among the mix of uses, or any other standard to guide their development as required by Section 163 of Florida statutes. And here also we'd like to call out that within the MPMU, as we went through our previous presentation, it does call out within MPMU that the uses permitted there would include residential, attached, detached, general retail, professional and general office, light industrial, institutional, recreation, open space, and conservation. Density has been called out within that MPMU, that it's not to exceed 1.2 dwelling units per gross acre, and also that the maximum FAR shall be 1.0. Regarding its distribution of uses, as we specified earlier, for every dwelling unit, there's a requirement to provide for 50 square feet of retail and service uses, and within the workplace employment center, which includes office, healthcare, industrial uses, that for every dwelling unit there should be 60 square feet of workplace employment center. And the recreation open space, no less than 50% of the area designated as MPMU shall be called out as recreation and open space. So, and a comment we received from, this is also from the State Land Planning Agency. It just called out for clarification of what was in the proposed maps. The proposed amendment does not provide existing maps or the proposed changes. The city should include a detailed breakdown of the future land use map changes specifying the approximate acreage for both the current and proposed land use designation. And this table, which we've created in response to that comment, just basically calls out what's in the current future land use map and what's in the proposed future land use map, barring any comments we've heard during this meeting. This is simply in response to the state's comments. So within the current existing future land use map, The total area is about 14,300 acres, and 9,913 acres of that is DRI. There's still about 1,884 acres that are in conservation, and that would be the Flagler County designation. Conservation areas within that area includes 989 acres of City of Palm Coast designated conservation lands, and there's still 1,518 of ag and timberlands that maintains the Flagler County designation. Within that proposed map, which I'll show on the next slide, I believe, yes, on the next slide, it is proposed that 13,309 acres go to MPMU. We maintain about 765 acres of mixed use, and the conservation areas will be down to 230 acres. Plus, within that proposed map, there was about 7,100 acres of unincorporated areas that are proposed to be designated as master plan mixed use. And that would have only happened if they were annexed into the city prior to the second reading of the comp plan amendment. And this is that map. The one on the left shows everything that's currently within the city, currently with designations of DRI mixed use and conservation. And the map on your right was the proposed map, which basically changed most of the DRI mixed use to MPMU. And also included in that map is that 7,100 acres that, if annexed into the city, would have also been designated as MPMU.
So with that additional property, would it also play into that we discussed earlier as conservation is a certain percentage? So land, it's basically land they can't use for anything anyway, and that chews up a certain percentage. Did you catch that earlier, Vice Mayor? Did you catch it?
I'm not sure, but I don't think it would if it's separately
Yeah, but
land use for
they're saying
conservation.
annex in this property before the second read. So they want to be part of this change, so that land will be incorporated in that MPMU.
That
right?
was their intent, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Which again, I don't fundamentally have an issue with, but we need to do with it, I mean, it's currently zoned county ag. So they would have to come in and do an MPD application, presumably with the rest of this, and let us figure out the best use of it, whereas right now, they want it to all come in and be lumped in as MPMU, which I'm ardently against.
I go back to the road that's going out there when we talked about corridors for migration and stuff for animals. Really, we're interrupting. When we build that road, we're going to severely interrupt and disrupt the migratory patterns of animals in this area. That's just my perspective. Because that road, it's not going to be a raised road. You know, there's only going to be that fatal funnel, right, General? That fatal funnel under that flyover, that's going to be where they cross because of that road. Otherwise, they're going to be hit on the road, especially deer, bear, everything's going to be hit on that road because we're cutting a road through there. That's just my perspective. All right.
So comment number 4 had to do with a map for the coastal high hazard area. I want to be clear that the previous map, future land use map, did include the coastal high hazard area. It was just difficult to see. And so I believe that the review agency missed it. And so our proposal to sort of make it a little more clear that the coastal high hazard area has been identified in our future land use map as required by state statutes is just to basically create a new map, just calling it out as its own separate map so that it's clear that it's there. I believe in the map that we sent, there were dots and you really couldn't tell if it was a shading or just a flaw in the printing process. So this is our proposed way to address that issue. And finally, this is just to bring some consistency into one of the data and analysis map, and this is from the Department of Transportation. we had a map that showed there were 4 interchanges along the Florida East Coast Railroad for the maps that were transmitted. But in another map, they are simply shown as overpasses. And again, I think to bring that into consistency, as you can see on the map on the left, if you look along the railroad track, we identified these circles, gray shaded circles, are identified as interchanges on that map, but they're not to be interchanges. There will not be an interchange between a roadway and a railroad. So to clarify that, we propose to just delete that and not have that at all. I think it was just a matter of clarifying that there are no interchanges proposed between a railroad and the railroad track. But there will be an overpass, as called out in map 213. So moving on. Next steps, I believe we've received direction from City Council regarding how to move forward. The first bullet point there, adopt the amendments as transmitted, except for the future land use map. The existing 2035 flume will need to remain in place, again, due to a number of reasons. Additional changes can be made at this point, whether you want to add, delete, modify policies or maps.
So, sorry, Mr. Papa. Mayor, City Council, if I can, just so that we're very clear on the direction as far as next steps. I know we have a motion and on the table, but previous City Council, whenever we were going through the comprehensive plan, we had individual workshops where we gave you all of the policy detail in backup, and we went line by line, word for word of those policies. And, you know, while we've provided you all of the draft policies for the 2050 plan, we didn't use this format for this presentation to do that because there's so many, and I didn't want to rehash everything, right, Ms. Pontieri? You said there's a lot of good things that we've already adopted in here. But what it seems to be is that there's, you know, still some discussion on a couple of different elements. So I have a couple options for you. We can host one of those workshops where we go line by line in those site-specific policies. I would call your attention, as you're all very interested in the future land use element, Chapter 1. In your 2035 plan, there is a policy called the Northwest Corridor Overlay Area. And in your 2050 plan, and all of this is public information, it's on our website, it's in our adopted plan, as well as palmcoast.gov/Imagine 2050. If you go to policy 1.7, which is the master plan mixed use, a lot of the language is very similar, and it actually does define what density, intensity in the 2050 plan, what that actual definition is that it's referencing in the policy itself. So if your direction is that you want to have a workshop specifically related to the future land use map or the housing element, I would just call your attention to, that specific policy, because a lot of the language that you're discussing today is in both sides, whether it's the 2035 plan or the 2050. I would just say that the 2050 does elaborate a little bit more in some of its definitions of what is defined as a village center, an employment center, mixed-use neighborhoods. Instead of it being called a greenway overlay in our 2050 plan, they called it a greenway preserve. So, and to your point, Mayor, about a habitat, wanting to make sure we weren't, disturbing the wildlife. There are, requirements to have a habitat conservation management plan as well. So I think I just want to be very clear to the public, is the language is there. It's just which version do you want? So and we just need some direction on how we get to an end result.
So what were you proposing in terms of the workshops?
So there's two things. I heard we want to adopt the 2035 map, but then I've also heard we want to look back at those specific policies. So my recommendation to you, if that is how you choose, is that we hold a special workshop on just those policies that you're wanting to review and relook at them word by word. If there's language that needs to change, we would need to schedule that for planning board, and then we would go ahead and request an extension from the state because we're not going to make our deadline.
Any other comments? What was,
This would be a public workshop.
Yes, sir. They,
Okay.
and they were previous. We were here till 4:30 one very fine
No,
afternoon.
I'd advocate for that because the only way we get to a consensus is when we're not under sunshine, we can't talk about it. So we don't know what anybody's priorities are. We can't go back and forth and try to find a happy medium here. So it's important that we are having these conversations, and I'm glad that we've had a chance to do it so that we can kind of get to the bottom of this.
yes. Yeah, when we talk about keeping the map, I don't think the map really, doesn't matter the map, it's what the document says. You can tag any map and say, okay, this is the map we're going with.
Yeah, but I don't want there to be any connotation that we're abandoning the DRIs by changing the maps.
Yeah.
So that was my initial concern there. I mean, I would 100% advocate for a workshop focused on the future land use element, drilling down more in the details as well as the housing element. But I still am in agreement to obviously get rid of the maps, go back to the DRIs.
Okay, so concerning the motion that's on the floor.
Mr. Mayor, might want to just go out to
Oh, wait
public
a
comment
minute.
first.
Okay, let's clear up what the motion is though first, Mr. Duffy.
So, Mr. Gambaro, if I heard you correctly, is your motion to accept the comprehension plan amendment as is, but keeping it the flow amendment at 2035, sorry, I can't read.
Correct.
Okay. And we had a second from Councilman Miller, so we're straight on that, Vice Mayor, you good? City Manager, you good?
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Oh, raising
Yeah, I'm
his
sorry,
hand.
I'm sorry. I just want to see, it's real clear about the 2035 map, keeping the existing future land use map. And then what we're going to do, right, is bring back the 1.7, the master plan mixed use for a workshop, as well as the housing element.
We haven't got that far yet.
But that's what okay.
Yeah, that's the direction after this, but we have to open the motion up for public comment. So I'll go out to the public. I know it's been a long haul for this meeting, but if there's anyone that has any public comments concerning what we've discussed today. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mark Webb, Palm Coast. To put this in perspective, the comp plan that the state requires us to submit in a timely manner to kind of show that we have a plan is not binding. I Googled it in 5 minutes and got back from the state, says this is not a binding law document. This is a plan. This is a perception of what we in Palm Coast wants in 2050, where we hope to go. And yet I'm hearing and I'm seeing evidence that we're fearful that we're handing a hammer to developers and owners and property or whatever. And I applaud you, Mayor, and I'm 110% in your court, not locking us into any future thing. But we're not. And I point that out to the earlier decision we made with the 38 acres, which is county land, that was zoned commercial, and now they want to ask us to bring them in as mixed property with a possible 250 additional homes right next to the airport. That's real time now, today, things we're dealing with. Has nothing to do with the 2050 plan or 2035 plan. This is great. We have a plan. I wish I had a 2035 plan for my life in the future. I'm just trying to survive week to week with everything going on today. So I would ask you to not get so absorbed into these. Make sure that you have caveats in this plan that says, this is a plan. This is not binding. This is not something that can come back and hit us over and over again in the head. Because we do need a plan. We do need a plan of what our utilities are going to look like in the next 30 years, which is the number one thing that the citizens in this town are asking today. Because we haven't had a plan for the last decade, and now we're having to scramble to put together almost, and I would hesitate to think that with the future, this 8-year plan for our city and water issues could hit $1 billion by the time it gets there. So I applaud everything you're doing. Don't put a lot of energy into this, and put our CYA comments in this plan and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the biggest obstacle is that developers will use your comprehensive plan as a legal basis, even if it's not really legal, but they'll use it against you. Okay, any more public comments? Seeing no one come forward, bring it back to the dais. Any further comments?
I agree with the last speaker. It's a plan. It's a living, breathing document that we can amend at any given time, and we do it every time we annex properties into the city.
Yeah, but they'll fight you like hell if you try to take something back from them.
Well, I mean, this council was unanimous in fighting like hell.
Yeah.
Right?
And so to be clear, it's the future land use map that defines those entitlements, correct?
Well, it's the
And
Entitlements,
that
future land
defines
use.
the density.
It's the plan for
Right.
those entitlements.
Yeah. So
Everything's
the
about
plan is
entitlements.
not legally binding, but those maps and those codes that define the density are.
Well, and part of the problem is, once you guys get more annexations and zoning change amendments and all of those under your belts, what you'll see is one of the criteria for that is consistency.
With the plan.
Correct. So you change this now, those arguments can be made, well, it's consistent with your plan, and now you're handcuffed, because it's
No,
consistent with the plan.
it's a
So-
checklist that then we're legally
Correct.
bound to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we'll close it out. Allison, if you could call the vote, please. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
just,
just-
There is a motion and a second.
there's a motion and a second. I want to make sure the council understands is that, because there was conversations of having workshops to update it. That was not in the motion, so that's why I just want to make sure it's clear what we're voting on.
Can that happen between now and the second reading?
Yeah, when it gets to the second, that would just be confusing, I think.
We can definitely have the workshops between now and second reading. I think that would be the goal. I think our deadline is, the state has told us that we need to have it back, an answer back to them by April 3rd.
Yep.
And if we're going to have these workshops and then we're going to make any changes in those policies, then that needs to go in front of planning board. So
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and ask for the extension by the state.
I just don't-
So that's why I want to make clear, we have a motion. That motion isn't discussing that. I'm not trying to make things more complicated, I'm just trying to make it more clear.
Or we could just
It would be up to Mr. Gambaro if he
Right.
wants to change his motion,
pull
but
back the motion and
Withdraw it.
we'll just withdraw the motion and just go with the workshops to continue on.
that's up to Mr. Gambaro.
Okay.
It's
Well,
complicated.
yeah, but I mean, this is a plan where we can still hammer out the details. Okay, I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, sir. All right.
okay, I'm just going to recite it to you one more time.
All right, here
I
we
know,
go.
I know you
I
love.
just want to make sure we're not pole vaulting over mouse turds here, okay? I just want to make sure that, that we don't overcomplicate this. There are a lot more complicated tasks that we need to continue to focus on. That's all I have.
Okay, Mayor, if I can, so just to confirm the direction is that we will hold a special workshop on the housing element and the flume and we'll get that scheduled in the next coming weeks. Now, I'm going to say it's a special workshop because I don't want it to conflict with regular business, and they are lengthy. When we go line by line and discuss these things, it's not cut and dry. So just wanted to say that for scheduling purposes as well.
And was there, I know there was discussion about requesting an extension. Was that directed as well?
So final direction that I will go issue a statement to the state that we need a little bit more time.
Yes, ma'am.
Understood. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just had a question for the Vice Mayor. You had mentioned some changes that you had thought about within the housing element. I don't think you specifically mentioned those during the presentation.
I didn't, those were.
I think it's just easier so that
Sure,
when we
yeah.
have the opportunity to talk, we should talk about it.
Yeah, sure, no, it was, under policy 3.1.1.6, density bonuses for development that include a percentage of affordable units and allowance of greater densities for missing middle. I don't think that there should be any density bonuses, considering I do think there's a potential for state legislation that will kind of force that upon us. So to put it in our comp plan now, I'm against. I am in favor of looking at our LDC and seeing if there's any design concepts, such as single-car garages, that we can start to incorporate to make fee simple ownership more attainable for our workforce. But to say that we'll allow density bonuses, that I'm not in favor of.
So that'll be further discussed in the workshop.
So we will bring back goal 3.1 of the housing element, and we will bring back goal
1.7?
1.7 on the future land use map.
All right, we good to go? All right, moving on. We're about 12:30 now. Item K, resolutions. Council?
Yes, we have a resolution 2025 approving a contract with Atlantic Pipe Services and a project contingency for the Belterre Trenchless Pipe Rehabilitation Phase 2 project.
Okay, city manager?
Yes, Mayor and City Council, while staff is getting going here, this is a budgeted expense. Thank you, Palm Coast Observer for covering this. It is on Belterre. It is a bumpy Belterre from Palm Coast Parkway to Matanzas Woods Parkway in front of the schools. There's a failing stormwater pipe underneath the road. We've tried to put a couple Band-Aids on it, but this is to go repair and actually do some pipe lining of that road. I asked staff to try and have a map ready for us. Maybe that's what they're doing, is getting the map up and going. Anything? There we go.
Could I ask real quick, those three people that just walked out, who were they?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Well, one of them was Kathy. She's our planner for the comprehensive plan. She was the consultant from JB Pro.
That was the JB,
JB Pro, yes, sir.
and the other two gentlemen were with her?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Carmelo,
Oh, I'm
good
sorry.
afternoon,
Yes,
I
good
apologize. Stormwater engineer. So I apologize, I didn't have a prepared presentation, but I just had this exhibit, but I'll talk about the project and entertain any questions you guys will have about this. So this is called Phase 2, right? And if you guys are all aware of what trenchless pipe rehabilitation is, right? We're talking about, lining it. In this case, it's going to be lining via a spin casting. It's Phase 2 because we've done a phase, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we did the first phase. This road along Belterre, it probably overall extends, I don't know, maybe close to 1.5 miles. The first phase was maybe 3/4 of a mile to half a mile. And we ran out of funds during the first phase. We couldn't do the entirety of it, and this phase is just picking up the second part. It's, for the most part, as you can see on the map up there, it's just 3 remaining runs. The majority of it is 60-inch pipes, metal, and it runs down the middle of the road. What this project is going to do is rehabilitate those pipes without to having to close the roads down in a permanent fashion. We will be closing lanes down, but the traffic flow will continue. We are trying to coordinate this with the contractor eventually to do it majority parts during the summer, times when school is down. And we don't have a schedule for it yet. We haven't even met with the contractor. We're waiting for approval from council before we could proceed with that. Carl, did you want to add anything?
I can just add on a couple components. These pipes aren't severely aging and corroding. Our biggest issues we have are at the joints of the structures where we are having some failures, and then it's sucking in the dirt from below the road and creating pockets and having dips in the roadway and having voids. And we filled in some of those voids with some structural fill material, injection, some foam. So this will, one, extend the life of the pipes by coating them and address all those joint connections between the pipes and the structure. So this is, it's a twofold thing. It's going to extend the life of the pipes and address those issues at the structures and the dipping in the road and the voids.
Are these mostly on
Was it on the west side?
the west side?
Southbound lane.
The southbound lane, correct.
Southbound lanes.
That's where those manholes.
Yeah, because I remember, I really permanently started living here in 2009 after all my moves and stuff, and I remember they were just putting in that second set of lanes on Belterre, because I almost broke my ankle out there one time going out to run in the morning. So that's 15 years. So those pipes were laid more than 15 years ago?
Yeah, I want to say they
about
were
right.
the mid-2000s time frame was when it was 4 lanes.
During the expansion?
Yeah, during the expansion, yes.
That would
They
have
were
been
widening.
2007, 2008, I believe.
Yeah, that's when I moved, when I got here permanently was then. Okay. Anything else? That's it?
I have a question.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
just discuss the real life, like what are our residents going to feel and in what area from this improvement?
What do they feel?
Life effects of this, of what you all are doing. How will this affect our residents' daily lives and to what extent, what specific areas?
Right, so during construction, what they'll experience is some lane closures, right? So people that are going to be dropping off, picking up their kids at the school or just going back and forth to whether it be groceries or work, there are going to be sections where there's just going to be one lane open going down south. So obviously in the mornings, you're going to be seeing some backup. In the afternoons, not as much if you're traveling northbound, right? Because everything is closed on the southbound lane. And that's going to be the majority of it. It'll never be closed. That's what we're intending to do, like where we have both lanes closed completely, right? So traffic will be able to get through. It's just going to be at some times during the day a little bit slower than other times.
And then this improvement itself, though, I mean, what will this improve?
Right, so post-construction, if you guys have driven through there and you've seen some of the ups and downs that we have along there, right? So like what Carl was mentioning, right? Along the joints where these pipes are put in, that's where we're getting the infiltration, where the soil's kind of just slowly going through there, and that forces the road to dip. So what this is going to do is going to solidify the pipe so we no longer have the infiltration. We're going to inject some foam, some expanding foam to rectify the road so it doesn't do that anymore, right? So we'll seal the pipe, solidify the grounds that are around it, so we don't have these issues anymore. So it's going to extend the life of not just the pipe, but the road as well, from that perspective, right, from the pipes not failing.
So my question is, you're not replacing the pipe, you're just repairing it, right?
Yes, it's a little tricky because, the spin cast application, what it does is they essentially send in like a robotic machine that just spins and just shoots out like a cement-like material all around the pipe. And that just gets brought in very slowly, pulled in from one side to the other, and it creates about 1.5 inches thick, like a mortar. It's a lot stronger than concrete. It's more like almost like a granite, if you will. So it creates a pipe inside the existing pipe. And that pipe, they have to provide engineering calculations to demonstrate that you know, to work with the loading for the traffic and whatnot. So the pipe eventually will be like a standalone, because the metal will just rust through the ages as it progresses. So it's kind of replacing it with that inner pipe, but, you know, it's you know, mending it for now, but it'll do the work.
What's the life expectancy after this is done?
I think they typically rate these for 40, 50 years, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this will be done primarily during the summer when school's out.
Primarily, yes. You know, it's a long road, a long stretch, and we still have to coordinate with the contractors.
Okay.
When you are spraying, and this is done by, there's people going down there sometimes too, and spraying and cleaning and doing applications. In the middle of the summer, and you're 8 foot deep in there, it's not the best conditions to do it in.
Yeah.
They would probably prefer to do it in the winter, and they have. So we're gonna have to probably have that conversation with them to see maybe the nearest locations next to the school, how we can do those, right? So there's gonna be some back and forth, but that's the main objective, is to do it while school's down.
And I'm sorry, one more question. This funding, what runs does this fund on your map?
All three runs are part of the scope of work.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
And this work will begin, when will it begin?
Well, we have to discuss with
And that's-
if you guys award it, right? Ideally this summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, any more discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple questions. So I see it's phase 2, so what was phase 1? Because I wasn't here for that, so.
Yeah, phase 1 was maybe a year and a half. I can't remember, it could be almost 2 years already.
Similar, though, it was pipelining?
It's almost identical. If you see the run between 3 and 2 on that map, that was mainly it.
Between the schools, okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, Carl, I see it's 60-inch pipes, right? Are there any future plans to upgrade or grow those pipes currently scheduled?
No, that would only occur if we were going to 6-lane this segment road, and that's nowhere in our
Okay, I just wanted to
long-term
make sure
plans.
we didn't have something planned 2 years from now and we're spending money to do this when we just knock it all
That's a
out
good
one
point.
time. And then, I think we covered everything in terms of timeline. I would urge, I don't know what the weather conditions that you mentioned, summer versus winter, and they'd rather do it winter besides heat, but I would urge that we get this done during the summer session. Anyone that lives in that area, I know the mayor does, I do. It's a nightmare during school times, and you've got 2 different school zone hours, so really those school zones are extended for 4 hours, 5 hours a day. So, if it's running into that, especially at the beginning of school, if it runs long, it's going to be a big problem for our residents. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, understood. And what we did do in phase 1, by the way, they don't close the entire, if you see run 1, run 2, run 3, they don't close that for the duration of the project. They'll probably close down about 3 manhole runs, right? So if from one manhole to the other is about 200 feet, maybe they'll close down about 600 foot of lane, right? And then it's open. And so,
I understand that, but even that's going to be a huge impact.
Correct.
I would advocate, I don't know if there's some technical requirements to this, but I would say do run number 2 first. That way, if, any of run 1 or 3 bleeds over into the school year, it's farther away from the schools. That would be my ask.
Yeah, I mean, it depends when we start, correct. Yeah, we'll look at all that, yep.
Thanks.
Okay, go, I'm sorry.
I've got a question. So, phase 1, same contractor, different contractor?
I believe a different contractor was awarded that one.
Technology, same,
It's same technology. I've got to double check, but I think it was a different contractor. I think this is a new, more local contractor than the last one we utilized. But it is the same technology, yes.
okay. I just want to make sure that when all that connects, it's compatible. How's phase 1 holding up using this technology?
It's worked very well, and really where they end is at the manhole, right? So manholes are about 4 foot wide, so they stop at one side of it, right? So this new one will pick up on the other side of that 4 foot manhole, right? So there really isn't an overlap in one and the other, They'll
Okay.
be able to seamlessly continue starting from that manhole.
Okay, I just want to make sure this technology is working before we approve another phase. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it has, and we've not only used it here, we use it at other locations throughout the city, and so far it's been very successful, yes.
All right, thank you, sir. Council, what do we have to do? Is just consensus, or
A motion.
we have the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve.
Second.
We got a second, public discussion. I'm sorry, discussion from the dais, any further? Public discussion, anyone? Ms. Stevens, Lynn Stevens, you got something to say about this? Okay, no public discussion, bring it back to the dais. Allison, could you please call the vote?
Of course, Vice Mayor Panieri,
Yes.
Councilmember Gombara,
Yes.
Council,
Yes.
and Mayor Norris.
Yes,
Passes unanimously.
thank you, ma'am.
you.
Next resolution, council?
Yes, another resolution for 2025 approving a master service agreement with Paymentus Corporation for electronic payment services and amending the master service agreement with Tyler Technologies.
Mayor, City Council, as our staff is getting the presentation ready, just wanted to remind you, this was done through a competitive bid process. Our previous contract expired with our vendor, and so we went out for competitive bid, had an evaluation committee, and Helena is here to discuss the selecting the right merchant services vendor. So, Helena?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Helena Alves, and I also have Stacy Young here, both with the Financial Services Department. And as Ms. Johnson said, we're here to talk to you about the RFP that we did and the vendor selections. The scope of services for the Merchant Services RFP included electronic bill presentment services, a customer portal, Tyler cashiering, point-of-sale processing, also our CD Plus, that's the software that handles permitting, and web payment services, as well as miscellaneous online payments. Going out for RFP allowed us to look for multiple vendors to meet our goals that were streamlining payments, improving resident services, and enhancing financial management. We looked for cost savings through lower transaction fees, enhanced user experience to improve accessibility and convenience for residents. Some of the key features we considered during the RFP were enhanced payment options, such as digital wallets, auto payments, and local merchant partnerships, integration capabilities with our ERP to reduce the administrative burden and improve cash flow, security measures such as PCI compliance and fraud protection, and customer support for both city staff and residents. So we selected Paymentus, which is our current vendor, as the merchant services for 3 out of the 4 projects, to include electronic bill presentment, customer portal, online miscellaneous payments, and our CD Plus point-of-sale software. Selecting Paymentus as the merchant services provider will allow new integrations with our ERP for enhanced reporting, administrative efficiencies, which will improve cash flow efficiencies. Our new contract with Paymentus ensures residents will not need to re-enroll in any services. So customers will have access to new payment features such as Venmo, Apple Pay, and be able to use the new chat box for support and billing questions. Another new feature in the new Paymentus contract is Scan to Pay, will allow cash-preferred customers to pay their bills in cash at a local retailer. For Project 1, which was, we selected Tyler Technologies to be our Tyler cashiering point-of-sale software. Selecting Tyler Technologies for our cashiering point-of-sale software will allow real-time integration into our ERP, and it will allow the city to upgrade our cashiering software into the cloud. Look at next steps. So part of the merchant services contract as we have it is For utility billing and for miscellaneous payments, the fees, the merchant services fees are absorbed by the city. And for our CD Plus, which is the building department software, those are paid by the users, so the fees are passed on to the users. So part of awarding the contract today is deciding how we want to proceed with those fees in the future. Do you want to keep the same module, or do you want to change that model?
Are we done? Any questions?
I have a couple, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead.
So on the Pimientos vendor selection slide, we have the picture of the online bill and then the different ways we can pay. This previous slide, I think. Yes. So chatbot, I would just want to make sure that we're not offloading in this, if we're selecting this vendor, we're not offloading any of our customer service to that and creating a frustration point for our residents. I know I've experienced several companies that I use fairly regularly having customer service, and then recently I've switched to chatbots, and then you can't get a hold of a real person and you get angry and feel like you're not being listened to. And so I just want to make sure we're not doing that, that they still have an opportunity to talk to a person within the city. And then in terms of the scan to pay for instant payment networks, is that an existing process right now?
So
Or is
no,
that
we do
something
not.
that will be upgraded to?
That would
Okay.
be something that we would upgrade
Just making
to.
sure, I have a tendency to be kind of narrow focused for stuff like this. And so I didn't notice this as an ability to pay when I signed up for it. So I just wanted to make sure. And then I think the Apple Pay, Venmo, those things are definitely in line with current modern expectations of payment. A lot of people look for that. So not having that is definitely kind of we're not meeting the industry standard, so to speak. So I like that as well. In terms of our next steps, are there any cost comparisons between the two?
So our new contract with Paymentus will save us approximately $200,000 a year from the current contract that we're in.
That's switching from the two different models, right? One to another, or no?
No. So let me see if I understand the question. You're asking between us absorbing the fees and not absorbing the fees?
Well, I saw that, so I
or-
wasn't sure if that was incorporated into that savings or not.
No.
Okay. So currently, we're using the user payment model? Is that correct?
So for utility billing, the city absorbs the costs of processing those payments, and for our permitting, the end user pays for those services. And we would propose to maintain the same
Okay.
type
Gotcha.
of arrangement unless you wanted to change it.
What is the user fee?
So currently, it is 2.45% of the transaction. With the city absorbed, it would be 43 cents per transaction plus the actual interchange rate. So we would have savings depending on whether the rate goes up or down, and that's why the projected $200,000 less than the current contract.
So if we switch to the user-paid model, what are the savings to the city?
So the savings to the city would be approximately $700,000 because that's what costs to process our payments. That would be a fee that you would pass on to your users, so to the recipients of the utility bill.
And would that fee be passed on regardless of the payment type?
Would that be,
Because-
so ACH payments is only 43 cents. So if you were to do bill pay from your checking account, that would be a different rate. That would be a much lower rate. But the thing is, you won't have it on auto pay, which you would have with a credit card.
What about Apple Pay? Is that associated with any user pay?
That would have the same merchant services fees.
Okay. So it would be roughly a $700,000 savings to what, our utility fund?
So it's split between utility, solid waste, and stormwater because your bill includes all three services, so not necessarily just utility.
Savings would be
Since it's all billed on the same bill, yeah.
Those three.
They're prorated
those
based
three
on the amount of the bill.
Is that it? Any further discussion?
We did reach out to others around us if you want that information, like the city of Ormond, they currently absorb oral credit card fees for online or in-person transactions. Flagler Beach passes their fees on to customers. Currently, our contract, we absorb fees for utility and business tax and code, right? And let's see, we processed approximately 470,000 payments for a total of about $75.5 million. So 67% of the payments were credit cards. So if we were to make changes to that model, you'll be, affecting possibly 67% of the users in the program.
There's no method of payment that comes with some sort of reduced rate or free rate. I'm just wondering if we can incentivize our consumers to use a payment method that is cheaper.
They enroll in auto pay, they get
Right.
5% off or something.
Yeah, just that way, we're being good stewards of the money, but also not passing everything on to the residents because we're already collecting taxes for that purpose. Or fees.
Say it's
So
already,
If it's in the enterprise,
the cost is already passed on to the residents? Say like,
Just
one way or the other it is.
Yes, that is correct. Same as if you're walking in paying by cash, right? Those costs are calculated into the rates that are paid by the residents. Yes.
we've always paid ours by phone. We've never done it online. No QR code or anything, just call and pay it for our utility bill.
I mean, I don't think that everything should be run like a business. I don't think Parks and Rec should be run like a business in the city, but I do think that the enterprise funds should be. So in my estimation, user fees like this should be passed on to the user for an enterprise fund, so for the utility fund, for the stormwater fund.
It's the intent of the fund, right?
Yeah.
Behave like a
With
business.
exclusion of the golf course.
No, I
We
think,
already had that discussion about.
well, that's
passing
Parks
on
and
the-
Rec.
Let's
That's
not
different.
litigate that.
It's not-
Happy to have that discussion again. Let's go.
That's Parks and Rec, that's different.
That's what I'm saying, but, that's what we were talking about, passing on those costs to the consumer out at the golf course. They were already going through that process, right?
Yes, Mayor.
That's a phased-in approach.
Yes, Mayor.
I don't know.
I-
All I
I
know
get it.
is the credit card fees, I think the user fees for the enterprise fund, for the utility fund should be passed on to the user. Particularly, and I feel pretty strongly about that only because, again, they have control over that more. If they're going to pay this user fee, they're paying it. They're not giving us money to then, delineate out the way that council and staff see fit. So I think that more control over where monies are going and actually knowing when I pay this amount, this is going to the vendor, this is going to utility. I just think that giving that power more to the consumer is important. But I agree, if there was some way to give some type of discount for auto, enrolling in auto pay and things like that, that is something I think we should look into for the future.
I was going to agree. So there's a cost savings associated with the user, not just passing the cost to, but it's cheaper overall when it's a user fee-based versus us absorbing the cost. Is that correct?
And it's definitely saving us money.
I think that's what I read.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
So say if right now we're absorbing the costs and it costs us, I think you said something in the neighborhood of $750,000, right?
That is correct.
If all of those transactions were then passed to the user instead, would that total still be $750,000 or would it be a different price? If
There's
you
a
added
different
all
model if it's user-paid fee. It goes back to the 2.45% per transaction.
And does that overall, would that be less or more than the $750,000?
It would be more than the 700,
Okay.
yes.
Got you. So I was trying to go down the path that if it's also more efficient, then it just further lends to that argument.
Yeah. I had another question separate. This might be, where's Doug? Is Doug here? Yeah, he's hiding behind Bear Hill. I know we're working on an app for the city. Will in the app, will customers be able to pay their utility line using Paymentus? Will there be a redirection to the Paymentus site so that they can actually pay their bill through the app? Is that the intent?
That's something we'd have to explore the best way to make that happen, if it's a direct link to pay for their account or a redirect to like the general login page. Our desire would be to make it very specific, where you can just pay right there, but we'd have to dig into more of the APIs they offer and those sorts of things to know if we can do that or not.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the dais? Can we get a motion to approve? That's what we're looking for, right?
But with what
Well,
model?
what model?
User fee model or client fee?
User fee, right? That's what we agreed on?
Gotta make a motion.
Somebody make a motion.
I would say that I agree that the enterprise prize fund should be like that, as well as, at a minimum, I think code should be that way, that we're passing that fee on.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't see any world that the city should be absorbing costs associated with code violations.
I second it.
Was there a motion?
Is that a motion?
I think there was. yeah.
It was a comment.
Restate, if it's going to
State
be a
your comment in
motion.
the motion.
I would like to make a motion that we're using the user fee model with Paymentus.
And
And Tyler.
I'll second it.
And amending the contract with Tyler for project number 2, right? We have 2 vendors. We're awarding to 2 different vendors. Paymentus for,
Oh, sorry, I thought that was a choice there.
We're doing both.
Okay.
We're doing both.
yes.
As well as Tyler Technologies, yes.
your recommendation, Helena?
On this item?
Yes.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? If you talk to, like I had the discussion with the rate consultant, you know, why would we absorb the fees on utility payments? His point of view was, you don't want anything, you want to limit the amount of thought process between a bill and a payment, right? So you're adding another layer in between of, do I want to pay the fee, or do I want to process by check? Do I want to come in and make a payment where you have such a large majority of your transactions already paid by credit card, right? You already have your account set up, you have your credit card in, and there only seems to be an interruption in that bill to payment when your credit card's set to expire and you have to go in and renew it, versus you're adding another decision point.
I guess what decision point are we adding? Would they not be paying this fee with the same payment information that they already are, including more options to pay, including Apple Pay, Venmo, things like that?
Yes, but with a fee to process the credit card, right? So you're saying, you know, I have this on auto payment, so I'm going to have this fee every month, or do I want to receive my bill and process it through ACH payment through my bank account, and then it's a reduced fee?
Well, I think that's probably the intent we want, right, is for them to make that decision based on what works for them, whether it's convenience and expedience for the fee or a different mode of payment that is perhaps cheaper.
You don't want to interrupt less interruptions in the process, correct?
In the thought process, yes, of how
Thought
you're making a
process.
I mean,
payment.
I feel like we as consumers make these decisions 100 times a day, really.
Yeah.
There's almost an expectancy, I
Yeah.
think, too, to oftentimes pay a user fee for convenience or for security. Some people make certain payments a certain way for security reasons. So, yeah, I think when looking at the utility fund, it should run at full cost recovery. So I'm in support of the user fee model.
Okay.
All right, should I restate it?
Yeah, restate it, please.
So I make a motion to use the user fee model for both payment vendors.
Okay.
I second it.
He seconded it. Public discussion?
How ironic, I have my bill right here. So just to clarify the cost savings, and I for one agree that we need to be transparent and let our community, our citizens know what all our costs are.
Mr.
You
Mayor,
guys are
just real
head-
quick, can you have him introduce his name for
Oh,
the
I'm
record?
sorry.
Mark Webb, Palm Coast.
I'm sorry, Allison.
That's fine.
Allison.
So I'm looking at, I used to do electronic to where I just get an email, say my bill's in, and I would pay it. And I started seeing a lot of fluidity because of water rates, sewer rates and stuff. So I went, stop, I want you to mail it to me. By the way, it was the only way I knew of the notice of the upcoming issues was because it was mailed. I'm not sure how many people get them mailed over electronic. Be interesting to know, because you were communicating with the upcoming challenges with the water with a notice that was attached to my bill. And my feedback I got from a lot of people, well, they didn't know it because we pay electronically. So let's talk about that a moment electronically. They're going to see an increase in the bill if you pay with a fee and not know what it is. You guys are faced in the next 5 months of having this bill be something quite different than what it is today. Mayor, you had a suggestion of, well, let's just move the trash off of this and move it to an annual payment on our property taxes, $30 times 12, couple $300 on it, to reduce the impact of what this document looks like. That was your motivation to kind of communicate. What you're talking about now with the transition is you want to add a fee for electronic payment, which is the preference of most people. There's an entire disclosure on the back of this document talking about what we take, how we take, whatever. You're going to have to physically change that document, which is a cost to the city. So there's all these hidden things that are going on that you're going to need to be aware of in communicating to the city people. I agree, let's pass a fee. I just went to lunch the other day and had a disclosure on the bottom of my bill that says, hey, if you're paying by a credit card, it's another
Transaction.
80 cents. If you pay by cash, there's a reduction. I don't think many people over the age of 65, which is our community here, really understands what's going on with those transaction bills. So I could go either way. You're going to get it paid either way. I'm just bringing up the fact that most people can't even make heads or tails of the bill they got in their hands now, let alone whatever that fee is. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Helena, that'll be annotated on the bill, right? It'll show that it's a transaction fee. It's in the fine print on the document.
So if it's not absorbed, it will be part of their transaction with the vendor. It wouldn't necessarily be on our bill, but we can certainly add that, credit card payments as a message on the bill will incur a merchant fee to be paid directly to the vendor. It wouldn't come through the city.
Okay, just so we're fully transparent. Okay, any further public comments? Back to the dais?
Yeah, no, I just like the idea of less money passing through us. I just think
Yes.
that that's better. So,
Yes.
yeah. And I like the idea of the disclosure as well. I think that's good.
Another thing I wanted to ask before we vote on this is, we had discussed, finding ways to incentivize less costly savings, I guess. If it's a user fee, then that's kind of not an issue anymore? Or is there, my question is I know that we're receiving this presentation, it doesn't include that kind of information because that wasn't probably requested in the request for proposal, but just wondering if there's ways to incentivize people to use certain payments over others because they're cheaper.
Yeah, is there any cost savings from any of these vendors, like if somebody enrolls in auto pay?
Yeah, how do we message that?
I don't know what the standard is, whether that's available.
So let us, if you approve the contract, let us get the contract approved and then go negotiate some of those auto pay programs and then put together a communications plan to roll this out, right? Because it's a change either way.
Right.
And so we need to alert the public, and part of doing that, we can create some education and possibly an incentive.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be good.
Okay, that's it. Allison, would you please?
Of course. Vice Mayor Panieri?
Yes.
Councilmember Gombaro?
Yes.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Norris.
Yes, ma'am.
Unanimously.
Ma'am, move on to item L, consent, Anyone have any questions about the consent items? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I have a couple questions. The first one is on item 9. How much money and over what period of time are we talking about?
Helena, can you come back? It's the opioid settlement with the county. The question from Vice Mayor was how much money?
How much money and over what period of time?
I'm sorry, Helena, I was Financial Services Director. So the payment that we received for 2024 actually came in last week was $25,000. I want to say the first one that we received for 2022 was $18,000, and maybe last year's was a little bit higher, around the $30,000. But if you want exact numbers, I'll have to email
No,
those
that's
to you.
fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And don't go anywhere, just in case, Elena.
Sorry, the item number 11 for the Public Works, it says over 50,000. Do we have any idea? Because then if you look down further in the worksheet, it says 75,000. So I was just curious, is a 75 a hard number or?
Matt's coming up.
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor, the amount is $70,450.
Perfect,
So
thanks.
if you look at the bottom, the $75,000 is the line item that we'd be taking those funds from, and then the $70,450 is deducted
Gotcha,
out of that
okay.
account.
Thank you. So it's within that budget.
Yes.
Perfect. Last one is, I just had a question about number 12. This says for aquatic management services. What is that?
So, okay, come on up, Carl. I asked about this one too, so that's the reason why, but Carl can tell you.
When do we get into the aquatic management business?
Yeah, it says aquatic management, but it's really ditch rehab in terms of with specialized equipment. So there are times when our pontoon or Menzies out, or when we have a surplus of work, or after a hurricane event, or whatever it may be. It's just a vendor on board that we can utilize when needed
For ditch rehab?
Yes.
for ditch rehab.
Thank you. I had nothing further.
Okay, consent to approve the consent items? A motion to approve the consent items?
I move to approve the consent items.
Second.
We have a second. Open public participation concerning consent items. Seeing no one come forward, come back to the dais. Allison, could you call the vote, please?
Vice Mayor Pontieri?
Yes.
Councilmember Gombaro?
Yes.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Norris.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item M, public participation. Mr. Webb, you have anything else to say?
The reason that I stayed and enjoyed all your
That's all I was here for.
Mark Webb, Palm Coast. I've been waiting for the opportunity to present and see what kind of actions we're going to do. And today, earlier, the sad interaction between you, the mayor, and one of the city representatives reminded me that in October of last year, Moms of Liberty sued a school board, I think it was Bavard, and it went all the way to the 11th Circuit. And the 11th Circuit ruled that the public has a very broad right of free speech in interactions with public forums like this. Now, I don't agree with a lot of what's going on, but it clarified and explained that public participation, however raucous, is part of free speech. And their example was amazing. If you guys had done something marvelous and the room was full of people and they all stood up and applauded and said, great, you'd be okay with that. But if you did something negative and somebody in the back room, and I kind of remember you, Mayor Mike, being very loud at meetings, because I was in here cheering you on from the back room, and being scolded by the mayor, Alphen, knocking you to be quiet. I know you felt, as I did, that that was kind of uncomfortable and a little bit maybe inappropriate. So I'm asking you guys at the dais, through your attorney, to take a look at this decision and find out where that tolerance level is to allow our city representatives, however passionate they are, within a certain boundary, and it does define that, to relook at that court decision at the 11th Circuit. So it was under appeal, so now it is guiding law for you guys to kind of look and see how better you can tolerate the citizens and their passion. Because unfortunately, I imagine over the next 3 weeks, you might have a room full of people that are going to be a little concerned about the bonds and elements. So I just wanted to take a moment to present that, bring that up for discussion for you guys through your city attorney, because everybody, however passionate they are, and some of us have been more passionate about things and loud, and we tolerate that, and we accept that as part of the election process and having you there. So that's why I stayed around to bring that up, so that you guys could discuss that. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one come forward, bring it back to the dais. Any discussion on what Mr. Webb just had to say?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Webb. Certainly, and I think my perspective is that, you know, we can have as many disagreements as we want, even, you know, on the dais, as long as we behave in a way where we're being respectful. You know, it doesn't mean you agree with someone to be respectful, but I can tell you from a personal perspective that as soon as I'm being cussed at here on the dais, that I'm going to shut down. I'm probably not going to hear the message that you're intending to say. So just from a functional standpoint, it's going to be hard to break through that when, you know, I'm receiving that message, you know, that, you know, I'm not worthy of a little bit of respect that you would treat, you know, anybody on the street with. So I think that's the kind of the standard of discourse, is that we may vehemently disagree, but as long as we do it with respect, and you're not going to reach a consensus or a point in between if you can't do that, right? I'm open to conversation with every member of this council and open to persuasion, and as long as you come from a logical and respectful standpoint, I'll remain that way. It becomes difficult when you feel like you're being either personally attacked or disrespected. And so I think that's the standard we should uphold on the dais, and present that to our residents as well, and hold them to that standard as well when coming up to speak at the podium.
Thank you.
I think,
Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I think, in my perspective, I think you allowed more than I probably would have, right? So I don't think that you stepped over the line there.
No, I draw the line in vulgarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. So just one thing, I would encourage council, as we are tackling the utility rate issue over the next few weeks, to go back and look at the 2018 presentation, to look at the projected numbers, the rates of growth, just the projections that were put into place then. And what really caught my eye was that previously we were under a impact fee. We had lowered impact fees, I think, back in 2013. So in 2018, they raised the impact fees back up. But here's the kicker. Some of the impact fees that they raised back up, one of them was not even as high as it was in 2013. So I think that as we're looking at what we're going to do with these utility rates over the next few weeks, it's really important to see where was the breakdown. I think part of the breakdown was a failure to be charging a lot of the miscellaneous fees. That's what we're calling them now, that we have included in the presentation this time around, a lot of those connection fees and things like that. But I think that there was also probably a failure to appropriately raise impact fees. So I would just encourage you all to go back and watch the 2018 presentations and look at those materials back in 2018. They were pretty enlightening when I did it, and I think that they can lend themselves some value to this analysis as we move forward.
Do you have any specific dates to narrow it down for us?
I know
Mayor,
Kate, the city clerk sent me everything, so I'm sure it's a quick forward of an email that she can send to everybody.
Okay,
Yeah, we can
Allison,
get that done.
Allison, you can make sure that happens for us. Okay. I'm sorry, I kind of skipped on it, discussion of council.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what everybody said. Dignity and respect, right, even if we disagree. And I think we're turning a page and moving forward in a direction where, you can't point to the council for, things not happening. We're all trying to figure it out and find a happy medium and legislate and go forward. So, I had to depart for a travel overseas right after our visit by Barry Cotton, the district director for Senator Scott. I thought the visit was informative and it was productive. And it's just a clear example of action that we're trying to take in order to do whatever we can to alleviate the potential raise in utility costs. Is it a slam dunk? Is it 100%? Absolutely not, but we're trying. And so there's two things that I want to make sure I get your support on as we move forward. One, there's an opportunity for appropriations to be submitted for the entire project, for the EQ tank, and that window is from the 11th of March through the 29th of March. I got that in last night from Barry, and so I went ahead and forwarded it to the city manager. She has that. Also, his policy staff in DC outlined 4 different grant opportunities that we could also apply for, that we can take action on, and also they've committed to providing letters of support for those grant opportunities. So I would like your support in making sure that we ask the staff to just pursue that with immediate action, so that we can, as we're having these discussions, we can point to it. And if it happens, great. Maybe we can figure that out on the back end if we have to make some hard choices moving forward, or maybe we can get some answers ahead of time. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward, and I'm very thankful that Mr. Cotton came down, toured our facility. I think it was enlightening for him. I think it was enlightening for those that attended. And we look forward to hosting Senator Scott at a later date so also he can understand, he can visualize what he's hopefully advocating for on behalf of the city. Looking forward to April 26th. My family and I signed up for the Tunnels to Tower 5K. So look forward to running against you guys there, hopefully, at some point. And then, where's Carl? Those signs on rimfire, that for the rimfire repaving, they're still out there saying, hey, potentially could be construction starting January 6th. Are we expecting any more work on that road? Because I'm getting a ton of questions.
Yeah, I believe there's still some specialty striping here and there on some of the roads, whether some hash marks or some symbols that they have to put down. They may have been done. I know we were pushing them last week to have the vendor come back and finish up all the miscellaneous striping items. But I'll make sure they get pulled down as soon as work is complete.
Yeah, or just update the messaging, because
Yes.
it's a little dated. Okay, thank you. Great discussion today. Look forward to continuing the conversation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Charlie, did you say Go Gators?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Go Gators.
You guys are killing me.
Number 2 basketball team in the country.
Okay.
Right, City Manager? Go Gators.
Vice Mayor, you got anything?
Go Gators, too.
I just want the residents to know that, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there, Councilman Gambaro, out there for that visit. I had office hours that day, and I didn't want to push any of the residents away, but I would have been out there if I could. I just had office hours that day. So just so the residents know that this is state, federal, we have pushed it up to everyone, and we're trying to do the best we can as far as the utilities are concerned. Something I got yesterday about kids, this goes out to the general public. I don't know if Brittany's back there or not. If we could say something, the sheriff always says, be the sheriff of your home and take care of your kids and make sure they're not doing crazy things out there on the street. Because I'm getting a lot of complaints about kids, just they're out of control, vandalism, running down the intercoastal wide open or in the canals wide open in their boats. Make sure you police up your kids, because I hate them to be in a youth detention for doing something stupid. We all did crazy things, but we were lucky that we weren't on video when we did it. There's no video evidence of my craziness as a kid. And also, if we could, city manager, follow up with Coles as far as that marking of those turn lanes coming out of that center. I think they've had ample enough time. If they can't get the paint in, I'm sure Matt and his crew can go out there and paint them, just charge them for it. Just give them a suspense and follow through, and don't give them forever. And they just say, well, we got to order the paint. Make them follow through and paint the lines the way they're supposed to if it's their property.
They're in non-compliance of a number of things.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
We need to follow through on those. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions of me? What's our next meeting, city manager? Or I'm sorry, council first?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I actually do have something. So to respond to the gentleman's public comments, I don't know if council members, when we went to our public workshop and amended your guys' policies and procedures, you amended your policies and procedures based on that 11th Circuit decision. So now that when people get public comment, they're required to address the city council as a whole, not just you. So we did make those changes to make sure it falls in with that decision.
Yeah. We have been doing it like that, I think, since we started. They can address each member of the council. It's just, there's a fine, well, there's not a fine line. It's being vulgar and being disrespectful, aren't acceptable. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for your agenda purposes, there's the reporting of emergency and sole source purchases for January. Do you have any questions? Okay. While we were in our meeting, I asked Kendra to look at scheduling a special workshop. We're tentatively looking at March 7th, which is a Friday from 9 to noon, to discuss the comprehensive plan elements. I did get back from staff, Mr. Webb, 45% of our users are electronic bills, and they do get the same notices. It just comes in like a different attachment, so there would be 2 attachments associated into the email. And then just as a reminder, City Council, Florida Park Drive will have the road repair this week from the utility issue that was a little bumpy up at Florida Park Drive North, and that's scheduled for repair this week. And that concludes.
So that's paving down to where that first speed calming device is installed in front of Mr. Carr's house?
Yes, sir.
From the north end down to his street?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it?
That's all I have.
Anything else? Staff? Going once, going twice? Sold. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Adjourn.